language domain and the learning of that. So oral language does develop, and the development of that in terms of birth through year 1. And so what does that look like? What are some characteristics of those types of things? So this is what it looks like in regards to those babies and the development of their language through the age 1. Of course, they're going to experiment with different sounds. Their communication is going to be through cries and different types of noises, right? Might do some babbling, making different noises when they're by themselves. Familiar names will start to become understandable. They will recognize them because of the repetition of those sounds. They will work to say their first words, some utterances. They will start listening to conversation, and also laughing goes along with that during that first year. During years 1 to 2, things just progress as we would typically understand, right? Utterances are increasing. We may not understand them, but their length of what they're saying and what they're uttering becomes longer. They start to use more of their receptive language, and that is far more greater than expressive language. They're understanding a little bit more, but yet they're not able to express or convey how they feel, what they need, what they want. Telegraphic speech in correct order is starting. 80% of English phonemes are being pronounced correctly. Typically, they have between 9 to 20 words, which is, again, an average. Shake their head no, use the word me. So things are really starting to develop in years 1 and 2. Okay? So some red flags to think about or look at in these years 1 to 2 that might indicate there might be a speech or language delay within their development. Lags in language development. So maybe they're not really saying much at all. They're not much for utterances. They have less than 9 to 20 words, where they have hardly any words at all. Mispronunciation in the early years of certain words. So that could be connected to maybe something not quite working correctly. Maybe some muscles are underdeveloped, or within their mouth, or their vocal cords, things like that. There's hesitant speech, or there's stuttering. Those are some things, or they're that to be aware of. There's more serious problems if there's no utterances, if there's no speech, if there's no talking, if there's the receptive language is not happening. Those are some more serious problems then that of course we want to pay attention to as parents. But then if we are working with the child in a daycare setting, or in a early childhood setting, or Head Start setting, whatever it might be, we want to pay attention to that language development component of that. Okay? So now we jump into years or ages 2 to 3 in regards to oral language development. So language and speech is dramatically going to grow during this time period. As you can see here, vocabulary growing up to 1,000 words. Receptive vocabulary, meaning they're understanding what they are. What people are saying to them. So it grows from up to about 3,000 words approximately. Enjoying rhyme and repetition, playful, silly use of language. That's why we have so many goofy songs for younger kids, right? Is working on that repetition, that rhyming, those repeats of words, and just getting them to hear sounds, use sounds appropriately. So it's really kicking up and developing during this time. Telegraphic speech, moving from that to 3 to 4 word sentences, starting to use adjectives and adverbs within their speech, and then tries to give a name to everything. They may misname things, right? They might know what a cow is, and then they see a horse and they name that, or say that is a cow as well. So those types of things can definitely come into play in regards to giving a name to everything, and also the different characteristics for the development of their language during years 2 and 3. Now, ages 3 to 5, they're getting into the preschool years. Vocabulary of 1,000 words should expand dramatically with that, and begin to skyrocket as they're getting into a little bit more formal schooling, and also probably some more exposure to peers and other people in their community. The syntax structure grows. Acquisition of all basic elements of adult language is typically done by age 4. Okay? So they have all the stuff there to be able to speak whichever language they are learning, or they are exposed to, whatever their home language is, that they have all those basic elements. Okay? They start to develop private speech, or they're thinking, to themselves, talking to themselves basically within their head. And then, of course, continuous development of phonological awareness. So these things, the phonological awareness, sentence structure, syntax structure, that continues to grow and develop as they go through schooling. So now here we're looking at years 5 to 7, about 2,500 vocabulary words. Their syntactic ability is close to that of adults. Difficulty with certain sounds, bathroom talk, and curse words come into play. So there's going to be some language and terms that they hear from their peers, right, or they hear online, or they hear elsewhere. And so that's something that then, of course, we have to talk about or think about or whatever. Language skills used as foundation for beginning reading and writing as well. So that's beginning of the reading writing component for some kids. 7 and beyond, the grammar stuff is becoming very close or equivalent to adults. There's going to be some work with that, obviously, but they typically enjoy talking. Their language develops, of course, at a rapid pace because they are now exposed to a lot of language, a lot of reading material, a lot of information, so a lot of conversation. And here it talks about to keep up and be able to read fluently, children must now learn about 3,000 words per year during their elementary school years. And so as children grow and develop, more words are added, they become more complex, right, to their vocabulary skills. So that's something that they need to work on in regards to keeping up and hopefully staying on top of being fluent, understanding, some of those vocabulary terms as well. Fluency is good because it means you're able to read words, pronounce them, sound them out, all those different components. Doesn't always necessarily mean that you understand them. And so there's a difference between fluency and comprehension for reading. Comprehension is very important as well in terms of understanding what something means, what context it's used in, etc. So what are some things we can do to help this early acquisition of literacy? These are some components here that we look at. Development of language benchmarks, certain sight words that students might know by a certain age, certain sounds, etc. Rich language experiences in the home. That's not something we can control, but that's something that we can share with the families that we work with in terms of the importance of that language experiences. So conversations with the kids, right? Talking to them, even if they may not understand, just them hearing voices and language and sounds is super important. Phonological awareness, phonemic awareness is important. Right? So talk about here also enhancing listening skills in regards to the phonological awareness. So what we can do here for that is to include activities in which children hear, say, and see language simultaneously. Okay? So it could be something like an example might be a book read along. Okay? You're reading the book, okay? They're hearing it. You might read a sentence. They're seeing the sentence, and then they repeat the sentence. Okay? An example of that. So read along books, even books, large group books, or circle time books that you're reading to the kids where they can see the words. So using a Promethean board, a projector would be something like that. It would be good as well. Okay. Encourage wordplay. Kids are talking or using certain words. Design segmentation activities where you're breaking apart words, breaking apart sentences. Alliteration activities. Encourage temporary spelling. Temporary spelling is where students spell it the way they think it sounds, right? And then we come back later and correct that or show them what the correct way to spell a certain word is. And temporary spelling is something that's good because it doesn't slow down kids on their learning, on their writing, on their typing type things. So different stages of this. We begin with the emergent writing. Okay. So you can see some of these things here that students will do, kids will do in the emergent writing. 3-letter marks, differentiation marks, letter forms, letters and letter strings, Words with fixed quantities, single letters for words, and they can potentially enter the consonant stage where initial consonants do appear. So here they're just beginning of that writing piece. Okay? Things are not going to look how they normally do or look correct, but they are going to begin that process of trying to put down words, sentences, thoughts in writing. Okay? Students will skip endings. They don't use spaces between words. They do use the correct directional movement. So, of course, in America or North America, it's left to right. In many other countries, it's right to left. Learns letter names and sounds. Invented spelling, which is fine. Like I talked about that a couple slides ago. Uses some known words in the correct position and often selects known topics for writing. Okay? So in the emergent writing, we're really just encouraging that writing process. Okay, we're not doing a whole lot of correcting right now. Because they're just getting started with that. We will, or you can do some of that correction, but you don't want to be overwhelmed. You don't want to overwhelm the child because too much overwhelming, too much correction at the start might discourage some kids from continuing their emergent writing piece. And as kids get older, the less they like to write. So we want to encourage that as much as possible. Stage 2, early writing. So some things change here a little bit for that. Sounds and word uses end sounds and most words correctly. Knows letter names and letter sounds. Enters the alphabetic stage. The vowels do appear. They can spell many difficult words correctly, and they use most correct spellings. Uses more correct spellings than approximations. And so that is the second stage of that writing. Stage 3, they start to develop, of course, a little bit more. So using the final blending sounds correctly. They're using suffixes correctly, as it shows here, the ing, ed, etc. Syllables, editing skills, all these things are starting to develop and being used mostly correctly. Okay? They might look and compare their own work with print in books and elsewhere and correctly places punctuation, sentences, apostrophes, commas, etc. They also correctly divide stories into paragraphs. It's not just one big sheet or one big paragraph for everything. Publishes correct articles of work, various sentence beginnings, sequencing ideas, writes in a variety of styles, etc. So it's 3 big stages here. So you can see stage 3. Stage 1, we're going to look at in the early writing years. This could be a kindergarten, first grade-ish range. Stage 2 could continue to be second and third. And stage 3 could be third and fourth. Again, this depends upon the abilities of your kids, how they develop, how they grow, etc. So some will struggle and stay in this stage 2 writing for a little while with that till they have more practice. And some will get into stage 3, but won't necessarily do all these things correctly as well. So again, those are averages, and not all students are necessarily in each one appropriately. Some might struggle with spelling. Some might struggle with punctuation, but be very good at spelling and all these different pieces of that. So again, it depends upon your student. So some early abilities to pay attention to and be aware of. Keen auditory and visual discrimination. They can tell the difference between words and sounds by hearing them, but also seeing them. They understand or very aware of the whole part relationship within words and sentences. They can recall images and configuration. They have the ability to discriminate and differentiate, ability to follow directions, and they have a strong receptive and expressive vocabulary. So these are some early abilities that students will develop within their language, their oral language ability. So what's the sequence of developing literacy? They begin to attend to symbols and tools, symbols being the letters within the writing system. Okay, we call them symbols because not all alphabets in different languages have letters. They might have symbols that they use instead of the letters. Gain experience with those symbols and begin to remember them, what they represent, what they mean, how they put those symbols into practice to create words, to create meanings, to create sentences. And then acquires internal literacy constructs that allow independent use and confidence. So they're learning the stages and the rules, all those different components of the rules of the language that they are exposed to learning and developing. Balanced and integrated literacy programs will do the following things. They will have oral language, reading, and writing experiences. They will use literacy rotations, meaning they might work on, oral language for a bit. They might focus a little bit more on writing. They'll also then bounce back to reading. So they'll use rotations so that it's not all at once and too overwhelming. So they can focus on different skills as they're working through that. They also might have literacy spin-offs where you are looking at types of books, or you have a theme, a book as a theme, for example, and you're doing lots of different activities around math and science and physical education, music, etc., off that topic, off that book. That's considered a literacy spin-off. And so that's kind of a thematic unit type thing, or you use that theme, that topic, whatever it is, as what you're going to do in your other subject areas. And that can be focused, like I said here, on language and literacy pieces of that. Okay? So